Well, buddy, I secured that land. Yeah, we're going to keep it wild. I knew you'd appreciate that. There is a God. It happened quietly. No announcement, no camera crew, no staged moment. Just a single sheet of weather wallpaper pinned to an aging barn door at Turtle Island. A page written in Eustace Conway's unmistakable handwriting, but not in the calm, steady script the world had seen for decades. This message was different. The strokes were heavier, the lines uneven, as if his hand trembled or time was running out while he wrote. And at the very top of the page, in letters darker than the rest, he wrote 4 words that froze everyone who read them. I cannot stay here. For a man who spent his entire life insisting the wilderness was the only place where he truly belonged, those words made no sense. But the rest of the message was even more disturbing. Eustace admitted that something deep in the land had shifted, something he had felt growing for months but could no longer ignore. He warned that the mountains were responding to forces older than memory, and that the balance he dedicated his life to protecting was cracking in ways he'd never witnessed. His message didn't explain the cause. It didn't name a threat. It simply asked people to pay attention to what the earth is saying before signing his name with a signature that looked rushed, almost forced. Rumors spread within minutes. Some thought he was leaving because of sickness. Others believed he was simply tired after decades of fighting lawsuits, storms, and the endless weight of keeping Turtle Island alive. But those who knew Eustace, the people who had worked beside him, lived beside him, trusted him, said the note felt nothing like a retirement, it felt like a warning. A final message from a man who has spent more time listening to the land than anyone alive. By the time locals arrived at Turtle Island, Eustace was gone. His cabin was silent, his tools packed away, his animals relocated, and pinned to that barn door, fluttering in the cold mountain wind, his message remained, staring at the world like a final attempt to prepare humanity for something he refused to write openly. Long before Eustace's note appeared on the barn door, something strange had already crept into Turtle Island. People close to him said the first sign wasn't fear. It was silence, not the peaceful natural quiet of an early mountain morning, but a deeper, heavier stillness that seemed to press against the skin. Birds that normally filled the canopy with constant chatter stopped singing at once. The flowing creeks near the cabin sounded muffled, as if the water itself was moving through a different world. And the forest, which always felt alive, began to feel like it was holding its breath. Friends who visited him during those weeks said Eustace moved differently. He walked slower, listening more than speaking, pausing mid-sentence as if hearing a distant sound no one else could. During conversations, he would glance toward the tree-line without explanation, eyes narrowing like he was watching something step between the shadows. He no longer laughed as easily, no longer told long stories by the fire, instead, he would drift off into moments of sharp alertness as though waiting for something to reveal itself. He also changed small things around his homestead, quietly, methodically reinforcing beams that had stood for decades, adding new latches to doors that had never needed them, moving certain tools closer to the cabin walls as if preparing for the possibility of leaving them behind. None of it made sense to those who helped him. They assumed he was dealing with the usual battles of wilderness life, but Eustace never explained and he never asked for help. One old friend said the most unsettling moment happened during a simple afternoon conversation. As they stood near the old wood pile, Eustace suddenly froze, his head tilted slightly, eyes locked on a distant ridge. The forest around them fell into an eerie stillness, so complete that even the wind stopped. After several 10 seconds, Eustace whispered, "It's getting closer," and refused to elaborate. Everyone thought he meant a storm or a bear or maybe even a legal fight brewing again. But after reading his final message, the truth became clearer. Eustace wasn't reacting to something natural. He was reacting to something the land itself was afraid of. The wilderness has always spoken to Eustace Conway through weather, through tracks, through subtle shift only a man who lived his entire life outdoors could interpret. But in the months before he left Turtle Island, the land began showing signs that even he struggled to understand, signs that didn't belong to any natural cycle he had ever studied, documented, or lived through. And the first sign came from the animals. Deer that normally travel predictable routes suddenly avoided entire valleys. Squirrels disappeared from areas where they had built nests for generations. Even the coyotes, whose distant howls were part of Turtle Island's nightly rhythm, went silent, as if something in those woods told them to leave. Eustace tracked the migrations for weeks and found the same pattern repeating: spirals. Perfect spirals. Tracks and trails bending in unnatural curves, circling around a central point before vanishing into the underbrush. No predator could cause that. No storm, no human. Something was influencing them at a deeper level. Then came the sound, or rather the lack of it. Entire sections of the forest fell mute without warning, places where crickets, owls, and night creatures created living symphonies suddenly became void of noise. Eustace stood in one of those zones for nearly an hour, waiting for a single sound, a rustle, a chirp, anything. Nothing came. He wrote in his notebook that the silence didn't feel empty. It felt occupied. He also found fresh tracks he couldn't identify, long smooth impressions in the soil, too narrow to be bear prints, too deep to belong to deer, too elongated to match any known species. The dirt around them was compacted in a straight uniform manner, rather like some large thing had slid along the ground instead of stepping on it. Eustace recorded which way they were headed and quickly realized something pretty unnerving. Every single mysterious track was heading toward Turtle Island. When his family asked him what he thought it meant, Eustace didn't say a word at first. He merely shut his notebook, looked far off, and finally said, "The land is shifting around something we were never meant to find." And for the first time in his life, he admitted he didn't understand the wilderness anymore. The moment everything changed for Eustace began with something deceptively simple, a patch of disturbed soil near a narrow mountain ridge. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than erosion from recent rain, but Eustace noticed something off immediately. The soil was darker, thicker, and heavier than anything naturally found on Turtle Island. It looked almost clay-like, almost engineered. And when he followed the disturbed earth upslope, he discovered the entrance. It wasn't a cave, it wasn't a tunnel formed by water or time, it was a sealed chamber hidden beneath rotting wooden planks reinforced with rusted metal brackets that didn't match any construction in the region. Someone had built it long ago, then did everything possible to keep it closed. The boards were ancient but placed deliberately, as if whoever sealed the chamber wasn't trying to protect it from the elements, but protect the world from what lay inside. Eustace didn't enter fully, he never would, but he leaned just far enough into the shadowed opening to see what had been buried beneath the collapsed boards. What he saw made him recoil so violently he stumbled back into the mud. Inside, markings burned into the rock walls glowed faintly, as if absorbing the dim light rather than reflecting it, curved lines, intersecting spirals, and symbols he described later as not carved by tools but etched by something with intention. And lodged between the splintered wooden beams was an object, a smooth metallic surface rounded at the edges, pulsing with a faint hum, not a mechanical hum, not electrical, a resonance that vibrated in his bones. He touched the soil around it and felt warmth as if the ground itself was breathing. He backed away immediately. That night, he returned home after dark, soaked to the waist, trembling, carrying a lump of the same black soil he found near the chamber. He dropped it on the table and stared at it like it was alive. His family said he didn't speak for nearly 10 minutes. When he finally did, he whispered something was buried for a reason. He refused to return to the ridge, and from that moment on, he knew something beneath Turtle Island was waking. Once Eustace stepped back from the hidden chamber, the strange activity didn't fade, it spread. What began as isolated, Unsettling signs around Turtle Island soon rippled outward into the surrounding mountains, pulling other residents into the mystery he had quietly carried alone. At first, these encounters seemed unconnected, but as days passed, the wilderness began behaving in ways that no one could rationalize. Hunters were the first to notice. Men who knew every ridge and hollow like the backs of their hands reported hearing metallic echoes drifting across valleys late at night, not machines, not engines. These echoes sounded rhythmic, measured, almost as if something enormous was striking metal deep underground. And the strangest part, when they moved closer to investigate, the sound stopped instantly, like whatever caused them knew it was being approached. Then came the fog, a thick, unnatural wall of cold vapor rolling into warm valleys in minutes, swallowing entire cabins in pale gray. Residents described stepping outside and feeling the temperature drop by 20 degrees, tasting a sour metallic bite in the air that clung to their clothes long after the fog lifted. Wildlife fled from it, dogs refused to go near it, and locals said it moved with intention, crawling through the trees like a living thing searching for something. But the most unnerving reports came from those who lived along the old logging road. Several claimed they saw tall, thin shapes moving uphill against the wind, shapes too smooth to be animals and too silent to be human. They stood for seconds, then slipped behind trees and vanished without disturbing a single branch. As fear spread, sightings of unmarked black trucks added a new layer of suspicion. Matte black vehicles with government tires and no plates were seen rolling slowly along abandoned service roads at dawn. Some tried to follow, none succeeded. The trucks disappeared into the forest as if they already knew every forgotten path carved into the mountainside. By then, it was undeniable, whatever Eustace discovered wasn't staying hidden. The land was reacting, the residents were noticing, and the wilderness itself felt like it was bracing for something rising beneath its roots. The real turning point didn't come from the rumors, the strange fog, or even the unmarked trucks. It came from a discovery inside Eustace's own cabin, one he never intended anyone to find after his disappearance. A close friend, searching for clues, noticed a loose plank beneath the floorboards. Beneath it lay a weathered leather notebook wrapped in cloth. Eustace had hidden it carefully, almost ritualistically, as if he believed its contents were too dangerous to leave in plain sight. The notebook wasn't filled with the usual sketches of wildlife, seasonal patterns, and homestead plans. This was different. Each page documented a world unraveling beneath his feet. He sketched spirals he saw in the animal migrations, so precise they looked intentional. He mapped temperature drops that occurred only in specific pockets of forest where the ground felt as if it exhaled cold air. And he recorded strange symbols carved into stones deep in the back country, symbols identical to markings found in ancient indigenous sites, except these were freshly cut. One page detailed underground tunnels, but not natural ones. His drawings showed smooth, perfectly symmetrical walls, evenly curved corridors, and chambers shaped with mathematical precision, no tool marks, no erosion, no indication of human origin. Beneath the sketches he wrote chilling notes, pressure building beneath the surface, and later, the ground is responding faster than expected. But the final pages were the ones that shook his inner circle to their core. Eustace had drawn a massive shape resting far beneath Turtle Island, an immense form curled like something sleeping. He labeled it only as the sleeper below. The words were written 3 times, each stroke heavier than the last. Under that final drawing, he wrote a single sentence that froze everyone who read it. Once awakened, it cannot be put back. Those who saw the notebook realized something terrifying. Eustace hadn't left because he was afraid of the wilderness, he left because he believed staying might wake whatever was already rising beneath it. And if the notebook was right, the awakening had already begun. The morning Eustace Conway left Turtle Island did not look like a man stepping away from a home, it looked like a man saying goodbye to a living companion. Witnesses said he moved through the homestead slowly, deliberately, touching each structure as if committing them to memory. His hand lingered on the beams he carved decades earlier, the fences he built by hand, the water troughs he shaped from old timber. It was as though he wasn't just leaving a place, he was honoring it. Neighbors watching from a distance noticed something unsettling in the air that morning. The forest was unnaturally still, as if the trees were listening, waiting.